Well, Commerce Ministry is one of the most important ministries in the government of India, and in next few days, months or perhaps even years, we'll see lots of decision coming from this ministry. With me is Minister of State for Independent Charge, Nirmala Sitharaman. Ma'am, welcome to Doordarshan News. My first question, basic question is, what's your basic view of the economy currently? How do you gauge the economy in a sense right now?
The economy is not in its best of health. We know that at least in the last 5 years, due to persistent inflation and also the way in which production has been affected, almost coming to a grinding halt, job losses, qualified people remaining without jobs, and as a result of which there is a general sense of disquiet, trust, which is important, confidence in the economy, which is important, are both absolutely not to be seen. As a result, it is not a very healthy sign. Lots of work had to be done.
Ma'am, but in recent weeks, last week itself, we saw a rebound in the economy. In a sense, the IIP number came at 3.4% for April, which was in a hugely positive territory. The inflation is also, at least the retail inflation has fallen, though wholesale inflation hasn't. How do you plan to continue this momentum, or what should we call green shoots of economy recovering?
See, the very change in the government, the way in which the people of India voted for a stable government, the way in which voters have chosen stability as the key issue, in the sense of in the way in which voting has happened, the way in which people have been guided to vote for a stable government, has resulted in a buoyancy. It is just immediately after the buoyancy has been felt we are talking about, so we may not be able to say how sustainable it is, how long it will endure. But the fact is that itself, the outcome of the election itself has given people a feeling that there is a scope for revival. And that is the buoyancy you are talking about, or I am referring to. As regards inflation, you are talking about figures which relate to May, if I know right. So those figures were still carrying the previous government's inaction in controlling prices, and of course concerns about the failure of a monsoon which might happen, because even the Indian Meteorological Department have given us feelings that monsoon may not be completely successful in the sense available, and there should be a shortfall for which the government has to be working and preparing itself.
So do you think the inflation will continue in this current level because of lack of monsoon, in a sense, because as you said that IMD has warned against less monsoon?
I am not going to be able to predict on where the inflation will continue to be, but the efforts of the government will be clearly to ensure that availability of basic food, grains and also essential commodities is ready for the consumer, it's available for the consumer, and any anticipated or suspected shortages are going to be addressed, be it of onions, be it of any other commodity. So if inflation is going to continue because of supply side constraints or because of any other factor, the government of India is working to anticipate any such shortcoming, anticipate the loss in production and prepare for it. I'm sure that indirectly will have an impact on inflation.
Ma'am, on Friday, the Prime Minister talked about tough economic decision. The Finance Minister has also talked about these tough economic decisions, giving bitter medicine to the economy. What kind of bitter medicine or tough economic decision we are looking at?
Well, specifics will be voiced by the Finance Minister himself during the budget. But I think what is being indicated both by the Honorable Prime Minister and also the Finance Minister is that the state of the affairs is not really very encouraging, that all of us know. The treasury is not endowed with cash. It's unfortunate, but it is depleted of what it should be. And therefore, you're working under terrible constraints. With those kind of constraints, even a government which has come with a lot of hope Even a government like ours, which has come with a lot of expectation, if it has to start doing everything that it wants to do, it has a limitation, because we've inherited a treasury which does not have as much as we want. And therefore, there will certainly be a talk, like the way the Prime Minister has expressed, the fact that there will be certain kind of hard decisions which have to be taken, restraint will have to be followed, is because of the reality of what is available for us to manipulate or play around with.
Ma'am, you tweeted recently that you met with Prime Minister and you talked about trade and investment. Can you give us some details, the finer points? What was the talk about?
See, as a minister holding independent charge of critical portfolios, it is my duty to report to the Prime Minister as to what kind of work I am engaged in the ministry, and also to brief him on the way in which this ministry can rise to meet up with his promises which he's given before the election. In that, first thing is how to increase production and make manufacturing sector competitive enough, one, to be able to export, one, to meet Indian demands, and above all, to be the powerhouse for generating more jobs. So on that, what are the kind of things that this ministry is going to have to work on, or what are the alerts which the Prime Minister should be informed about? So that is one of the things. Second is on improving investment. The ministry is going through a very serious phase of assessing for itself as to how to draw investment, what are the kind of amendments which we have to do to the existing system so that investors can come with confidence. And third and most important is how to restore ease of business in India. Business today doesn't feel that it is easy to do business in India, and corporations are going out of India, taking even sometimes their core business. We can't afford that. We want people who invest and do business in India to feel it is possible to do business in India. There is a sense of ease with which you can carry on with your activity. If ease of business is not restored, you're not going to have any manufacturing left in the country.
So are you going to reduce some bureaucratic hurdles so that investment comes in India and businesses open fast in the country? Because apparently, as per some information, it takes perhaps 1 or 2 days to open a company in Singapore, while in India it perhaps takes almost 2 to 3 months.
You're right. The intention of the ministry is, one and first of all, to have Indian businesses continue here and prosper here with a greater sense of confidence, and be sure that the government is with them. We are not here as regulators to contain them. We are here to facilitate business, because we believe that businesses are the ones which are going to create employment. And for our young population, you need to give them opportunities in terms of availability of jobs. And above all, only when jobs together with the businesses are all working together with a certain sense of confidence is income going to be generated. And from that income, you'll draw more taxes. And with better taxes, you'll be able to do a lot more, in terms of welfare activities. So without this kind of a very clear, line laid out, you're just not going to be able to have enough income generated in this country for doing even the best intended projects or welfare schemes. And therefore, my first priority would be to, and that is what I've also informed the Prime Minister, that we have to bring in that confidence in the Indian manufacturers, that we Indian entrepreneurs, that we are with them, we are not going to be stifling them. We want to do everything that enables business. And the second one would obviously therefore be, how are we going to attract investors from abroad to come and set up business here?
Ma'am, let's shift focus to exports. Well, the silver lining in the Commerce Ministry is the fact that the exports are in the positive territory for many months now. But still, we are missing the target. Last fiscal, we missed the 325 billion target, and we have been missing the 300 billion target also for the last almost 3 years. Are we going to? Is your government going to give some export boosters?
See, first thing is, I'll be happy if exports are doing well. But are they doing well because they are highly competitive now? Our products are sought for quality, for its brand, and for the way in which they are competing in international market is something which we have to study. One thing which probably helped, but as much as it should have helped, it has not, is the rupee dollar rate. So if it had boosted more exports, we would have been happier. But the fact ultimately is Indian businesses will have to compete internationally and prove that the commodities that we have here, services that we have here, are of international class. And only then would you be able to improve your exports. On that, yes, first of all, I would want Indian demands, because India is a very big market. Indian consumers are now looking for international class goods, international class services. If we are able to provide it to our own, first of all, you're going to have your one thing certain, that your market is always with you. International markets have their own fluctuations. If there is a financial meltdown, they're going to adversely affect you. But never mind, you still will be able to earn a lot when you export. And therefore, both are of equal priority for me. I want Indian manufacturers to meet with a lot of our Indian demands, which are world class today, and be able to stand up and say, I'm going to export. So both, we are with them.
Ma'am, you talked about rupee dollar equation. The rupee has been strengthening against the dollar. It was 68 last year, if I remember, and today is hovering around 69 something. Do you think that this is going to impact the exports in a sense negatively, especially the pharma exports?
Well, impact negatively. If you're telling me that when you have to pay more for buying the same commodity, earlier because of the parity, or not so much of a parity between dollar and rupee, your imports will become more expensive. Whereas when your rupee can be $1 can purchase more rupees, then you would tend to think that your exports will grow better. So either way, I am only trying to see that we reach the optimal level in terms of export. But at the same time, imports will have to be, one, unless it's essential, you don't want to import because you're paying up. Two, if there are Indian substitutes which are even better and good quality, we have to look at Indian substitutes. So linking just the dollar rupee matter to the whole matrix of export and import may be a limiting argument, but we have to work on that.
Okay, ma'am. Let's shift to other important focus, that is FDI. Your government has made it clear even before election in your manifesto that FDI in multi-brand retail is a no-go area for you. Wouldn't it impact the foreign investor? Because for him, it will be like a policy flip-flop. The government is changing its policy and it might just send a negative signal.
I'm not sure that is how I look at it. Policy flip-flops cannot be afforded. I agree with that. But it is not just for the FDI that I use that argument. I will use that argument. That argument can be used for every decision of the government. But here, even when the last government, the outgoing government, brought in the FDI through an executive order, particularly the FDI in multi-brand retail, about which we are specifically saying, everybody knew that there was a lot of divided opinion in this country. And the outgoing government, which is the Congress-led UPA government, had its own partners in many states not agreeing to FDI in multi-brand retail. Example, Kerala. And therefore, it is, if we are saying that we don't entertain FDI in multi-brand retail, it is not going to be reflective of Government of India's flip-flop, but on the contrary, it is a position which is a considered position taken by the party which won its vote on that mandate. That is one of the points on which we won the mandate, because Indian traders, Indian small traders, Indian farmers have still not got everything that it takes to meet with the international market. They do not have financial inclusion. There is no 24/7 power in villages. The connectivity, the last mile connectivity for an Indian farmer doesn't exist. And if this is the condition with which our Indian traders and producers will have to compete in the international market, I think we are just opening up the floodgates without readying them. And therefore, it is a party's position on which we went to the public. We mentioned it in the manifesto. And the vote has been very reflective of that point. Therefore, we think this is not time appropriate. It is not the right time to open up on multi-brand retail.
Let's talk sector-wise. E-commerce, it missed the bus in the last FDI when the FDI was being announced. Is your government planning opening the gates of FDI in e-commerce?
Again, here you've got viewpoints which have emerged which are completely opposed to each other. There is a section which feels that e-commerce can help in better access to goods and services, which are middle class is looking for it, you want easy access and so on. There is also another section which thinks that this may be a backdoor entry to a lot of retailing which is otherwise not permitted. The ministry will have to look into it, finance minister also will have to take a call on it. So there is no final position yet, and I would certainly think it's the privy of the finance minister to speak about it when it comes in the budget.
Ma'am, apparently there is a cabinet note on FDI in defence. It's according to media reports. How do you think that FDI in defence will improve the situation of defence, in the sense manufacturing, local manufacturing and all that?
See, when you're talking about FDI in defence, we have to be conscious of two very extreme arguments. One is the indigenous production, which is an important activity which has to be cultivated, because you're sending a lot of money out of India for buying most important defense equipments, which is going to be important from the point of view of preparedness, defense preparedness. If it is just 1 year's business, you can send away that amount of money and say, right, we've got these equipments because defense has to be readied for any situation. But this is going to be a repetitive, recurrent requirement. You need periodically to upgrade your equipments, periodically to buy for better fitness and preparedness of the army. Is it going to be that every year you send off this money, this quantum of money outside? Or is it better that you gradually increase the capability of the indigenous producers to make sure that you are able to buy in India enough such arms and ammunitions which are helpful for the defense preparedness, without sending the money out, you're giving it to the Indian producers. So this is a very important aspect, particularly because it drains your foreign exchange reserve. It also makes you feel that you're dependent on other countries for your own defenses preparedness. So there are emotional arguments, there are sovereign arguments, there are technology arguments, and therefore this is an area in which you're wanting to promote Indian indigenous production. You're wanting to save on that money which goes abroad, which is not an investment, because if it goes, it's gone. Whereas if you invest in buying Indian made goods, you're at least increasing your capacity to produce. So all these arguments are being taken on board. There's no final call made as yet.
Ma'am, lastly, FDI in railways, given the fact that railways was an important part of the president's speech also, during Atal Bihari Vajpayee's government, railways has got modernization, lots of stuff. So this time around, investment is needed to modernize the railways, and one option is FDI. Will the government look into this sector also, FDI in railways?
Again, railways is literally the lifeline for Indian transport, whether it's freight or whether it is passenger, and it has been desperately in need of a lot of capital. FDI in railways is a very, very important subject on which a lot of discussions is happening. The Rail Mantri is seized of the matter. Obviously from them, also for them, rail safety is a very major issue, especially because technology required for better safe travel for rail is heavy capital intensive area. Therefore, the Rail Ministry together with Commerce and Finance will look into this matter again. In spite of and notwithstanding what is prevailing in the media, no final call has been taken on.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, let's go to free trade agreements. They have come under intense criticism, especially with bodies like FIO, saying the fact that exports with the countries we have FTAs have fallen, while imports from these countries have risen. So, are you going to review FTAs with these countries?
We are reviewing it.
Okay, you are reviewing it.
In fact, we have already taken a decision that FTAs, all of them, each one of them, will be reviewed, because as you rightly pointed out, there is a perception that FTAs have helped the partner countries but not so much India. And in this, is it because we have not leveraged the FTAs for our benefit? Is it because of our laid back approach, or is it because we failed to capitalize on them? is something which the review will tell us, and post which we'll have to understand how to handle the FTAs.
Ma'am, let's talk about trade with our major trading partners, India, with China and the US. Let's first start with China. It said for every $1 we export to China, we actually import 3 times the amount. There's a huge trade deficit which is not good for the Indian economy. How do you plan to rectify this situation?
China is a very big market. China is also a country with which we can improve better if we had greater access to their market. China is also somewhere from where I would invite a lot of investment into this country. A lot of investment can be done here. China again, in terms of tourism, a lot of Chinese travel abroad. We would want them to come to India too. So there is a lot of work, a lot of opportunity, lot of instances where we can really work with them and improve on trade front. But of course work has to be done there, and that's what we have started doing. And again, with China, a lot of negotiations will have to take place.
Can we have an FTA with China?
We'll see.
You'll see. Okay, ma'am. Let's talk about Pakistan. Well, Pakistan, the trade relation is actually a second tier diplomacy is through trade, and trade is a new currency of diplomacy between India and Pakistan. But there is one crucial issue, most favored nation. That matter hasn't sorted out, and Nawaz Sharif was in the country during the oath-taking ceremony of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Did he talk about trade, and what did he talk if he talked?
Well, I think from the ministry we are looking at possibilities of improving on trade with Pakistan. There are a lot of common, or I would put it this way, there are a lot of essential goods which are commonly shared in terms of tastes between India and Pakistan. There are times when, either due to climatic reasons or any other emergency reasons, India requires a certain set of commodities urgently, whether it is onions, tomatoes or whatever. Similarly, because in Pakistan too, because of certain situations, they also require such emergency goods and services. Besides that, there are a lot of textile and other commodities which will be of interest for both markets. Here, the most favored nation point is a relevant point. We can always harp on this, saying Pakistan has not extended that facility to us, but trade can be a very effective instrument through which friendship can be built. And I think it is on that route we are working.
Let's go to America. Well, things haven't been right on that front. Patent issue and protectionism are the thorny issues. You're going to meet the US trade representative in Australia. What are you going to talk? What will be the agenda?
Well, there are several issues on which engaging with the Americans, talking with them in detail will help. One of the main things on which, of course, we will have to talk is on the patent, intellectual property related issues, and on that a lot of discussions are due, not so much because India is doing something wrong, it's more to explain our position, more to explain to the US authorities that it helps to understand that our national interest is also the interest with which we are working to comply with WTO. They are not at odds. We want to only explain it to the Americans and therefore expect to build better.
Ma'am, very quickly, you are Minister of State in the Finance Ministry also, and handle corporate affairs also. Are you going to persuade the Finance Minister to reduce duty on gold imports?
Well, there's been a lot of public interest in it and public request also. The Finance Minister will take a call on it.
Well, thank you so much. So that was the Commerce Minister talking to DD News, and hopefully we will see the Indian economy growing above 5% perhaps in this fiscal or perhaps in the next fiscal. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Tata.